The ballroom of Veyrath Palace glowed with 1,000 candles, and every noble family in the kingdom had gathered beneath their light. Silk gowns swept across polished floors. Laughter rose and fell like music. It was the night of the crown ball, the one event that decided who mattered in society for the year to come. In a corner near the tall windows, Lady Alira Voss stood alone. She wore a simple gown of deep blue, modest compared to the jeweled dresses around her. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly, but nothing could hide the thin, pale scar that ran from her temple to her jaw. 3 years had passed since the night she got it, yet the mark still drew eyes wherever she went, eyes that quickly turned away, as if her face were something shameful to look at. She was used to it now, almost. "There she is," a voice whispered nearby, not quiet enough. "The ruined rose, they call her. Such a pity. She used to be the loveliest Omega at court." "I heard she got it falling from a horse," another voice answered, hiding a laugh behind a fan. "Clumsy thing." Alira kept her eyes forward and her shoulders straight. She had heard worse. She had heard it so many times that the words no longer stung the way they once did, or so she told herself. Her mother had insisted she attend tonight, though not out of love. "Lord Bannister's second son might still consider you," her mother had said that morning, adjusting Alira's collar to better hide the scar. "He is not particular. Smile softly. Do not speak of the accident." It was never called what it truly was. Not by her family, not by anyone but Alira herself, and even she had learned to stay silent about it, because no one ever believed her. Across the ballroom, a group of young Omegas gathered around a table of pastries, whispering behind their hands and glancing toward her every few moments. One of them, Lady Colette, was known for her sharp tongue and sharper ambitions. She caught Alira's eye and smiled, the kind of smile that promised nothing kind. "Careful, Alira," Colette called out, just loud enough for the nearby crowd to hear. "You would not want to frighten anyone tonight." A ripple of laughter followed. Alira felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she did not look away. She had learned long ago that looking away only invited more. A servant passed by with a tray of wine, and as fate would have it, a young lord reached for a glass at the same moment Alira stepped near. The glass tipped. Red wine splashed across the hem of her gown, and though it may have been an accident, the smirk on the lord's face said otherwise. "Oh, forgive me," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "I did not see you there." Alira pressed her lips together and said nothing. She excused herself and moved toward the far wall, where the shadows were kinder than the candlelight. She told herself she only needed to endure a few more hours. Then she could return home, remove the gown, and forget this night the way she forgot every other. She did not know that everything was about to change. At the front of the hall, near the grand staircase, King Ashar Draven stood in silence, watching the crowd below. He was young for a king, only 26, but 2 years on the throne had carved a seriousness into his face that made him seem older. He rarely smiled at these events. He rarely spoke unless necessary. The court had grown used to his silence and had stopped trying to draw him into conversation, though every Omega present still hoped, secretly, to catch his attention. Tradition demanded that the king open the ball with the first dance, and that dance carried weight beyond the music. Whoever the king chose to lead onto the floor would be marked, for the rest of the season, as a woman of importance. Fathers had ruined friendships fighting for that honor on behalf of their daughters. Mothers had spent fortunes on gowns meant only to catch a king's eye for a single dance. This year, everyone assumed the choice would fall to Lady Colette, whose family held great influence, or perhaps to one of the 2 visiting princesses from neighboring lands. The betting among the servants had already begun. The herald raised his staff and struck it against the floor 3 times. The room fell silent. "His Majesty, King Ashar Draven, will now begin the first dance of the evening." The king descended the staircase slowly. Every Omega in the room straightened her posture. Fans stilled mid-wave. Colette's smile widened, certain of what was coming. But Ashar did not stop before her. He did not stop before the princesses either. He walked past them all, past the beauties and the bloodlines and the fortunes waiting to be won, until he reached the far wall, the shadowed corner where Alira stood, still trying to blot the wine from her gown. She did not notice him at first. When she looked up and found the king standing before her, she thought, For one confused moment, that he must be looking for someone else. She glanced behind her. There was no one there. "Lady Alira Voss," the king said, his voice carrying further than she expected. "Will you do me the honor of the first dance?" The room did not just go quiet, it went still, as if every breath had been caught at once. Alira felt hundreds of eyes turned toward her, and for a heartbeat, she was certain this was some cruel joke, perhaps arranged by Colette, or by fate itself, simply to humiliate her in front of the entire court. "Your Majesty," she said carefully, "I believe you may be mistaken. I am not." "I am not mistaken," Ashard said, and something in his tone made her believe him. He extended his hand. "Please." Alira looked at his hand for a long moment. Then, because refusing a king was not something even she could risk, she placed her fingers in his. The music began, soft and slow, and the king led her onto the floor as if she were the only person in the room. Behind them, whispers exploded like sparks, but Alira barely heard them. She was too busy trying to understand what was happening, and too afraid to hope it meant anything good. "You seem surprised," Ashard said as they moved through the first steps. "Forgive me, Your Majesty, but I am the last person anyone expected you to choose." "I know." His eyes, a deep and steady gray, held hers without flinching, without the polite avoidance she had grown used to from everyone else. "That is exactly why I chose you." Alira did not understand. "I do not follow." Ashard was quiet for a moment, guiding her through a slow turn before he spoke again. 3 years ago, there was an attack on the Eastern Road, near the Voss family estate. Bandits struck a carriage carrying 2 children and their nurse. I was there, leading a border patrol that night. We arrived only after the worst of it was over. Alira's steps faltered slightly. She recovered quickly, but her heart had begun to pound. No one spoke of that night. No one except her family, who had buried the truth beneath a story about a fall from a horse, ashamed that their daughter had been caught in something so common and violent. "I remember pulling a young woman from the wreckage," Ashard continued, his voice lower now, meant only for her. She had thrown herself over a boy no older than 6, shielding him with her own body, while the attackers were still nearby. She would not let go of him, even when we tried to help her. She kept saying his name, over and over, making certain he was safe before she allowed anyone to look at her own wounds. Alira's throat tightened. "That was my brother, Ren." "I know," Ashard said gently. "I have known who you were since that night. I did not forget your face, Lady Alira, though I understand the court has chosen to forget what truly happened to it." She did not know what to say. In 3 years, no one, not her parents, not her suitors, not a single person at court, had spoken of that night as anything other than an embarrassment to be hidden. She had begun to believe, deep down, that perhaps it truly had been shameful, that she should have found a way to avoid the scar entirely, that her courage had been a foolish mistake, rather than something worth remembering. "They call me the ruined rose," she said quietly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "They laugh at my face and call it clumsiness." "They are wrong," Ashard said, and though his voice remained calm, there was steel beneath it now, sharp enough to cut through the noise of the ballroom. "A scar earned protecting a child is not ruin. It is proof of something most people in this room will never possess." The music swelled, and he raised his voice just slightly. Enough, Alira realized with a jolt, to be heard by the nearest circles of watching nobles. "I have attended this ball every year since my coronation," Ashard said. "I have danced with the daughters of dukes and the princesses of neighboring kingdoms, and not one of them has ever given me a reason to remember her the next morning. But I have never forgotten the courage of the woman who would not let go of her brother, even while bleeding, even while frightened, even while surrounded by men who meant her harm." Alira felt tears gather at the edges of her eyes, and she blinked them back quickly, unwilling to let the court see her cry. "Not tonight. Not after everything." "Why did you never say anything?" she whispered. "You could have ended the rumors years ago." "I considered it," Ashard admitted. "But I did not want to give you a title you did not choose for yourself. I wanted you to know, first, that I remembered. The rest, I thought, could come in its own time." Nearby, Colette had gone pale, her earlier smile long since vanished. Whispers moved through the crowd now, but they had changed entirely. No longer cruel, but stunned, uncertain, some already regretful. Lords who had ignored Alira all evening suddenly found themselves straightening their collars, as if preparing to be noticed by her instead. Alira barely registered any of it. Her entire attention remained fixed on the king, on the steadiness in his gray eyes, on the strange, unfamiliar warmth spreading through her chest. "I do not know what to say," she admitted. "You do not need to say anything," Ashard replied. "You only need to finish this dance." So she did. She let herself move with the music, let herself feel, for the first time in 3 years, like something other than an object of pity or scorn. The candlelight no longer seemed harsh. The whispers no longer seemed to matter. For a few minutes, there was only the music, the king's steady hand, and the strange, fragile feeling of being seen, truly seen, for who she was, rather than what a scar made her appear to be. When the dance ended, the room broke into applause, though it came slowly, almost hesitantly, as if the nobles were still adjusting to what they had witnessed. Ashard did not release her hand immediately. Instead, he bowed his head slightly, a gesture far more formal than the moment required, and yet it felt, to Alira, like the most sincere thing anyone had done for her in years. "Might I request a second dance?" he asked. "I am told it is unprecedented for a king to ask twice in one evening." Alira felt the corner of her mouth lift, the first real smile she had allowed herself at any ball since the attack. "I believe you would be setting quite the example, Your Majesty." "Good," Ashard said, the faintest hint of warmth breaking through his usual composure. "I have grown tired of following examples I did not choose." He led her back onto the floor as the musicians began again, and this time, no one dared to whisper unkindly. Across the room, her mother stood frozen near the refreshment table, uncertain whether to feel proud or humiliated, though Alira found, for once, that she did not care which. As they moved together through the second dance, Ashard leaned in slightly, his voice quiet enough that only she could hear. "I would like to call on your family properly," he said, "not as a king offering charity, but as a man who has admired you for a very long time and no longer wishes to hide it." Alira looked up at him, searching his face for any trace of doubt or pity, and found none, only steady, quiet certainty. "I would like that," she said. For 3 years, she had walked into every ballroom bracing herself for cruelty, certain that her scar had cost her any chance at being seen the way she once was. Tonight, surrounded by the same nobles who had mocked her only hours before, she understood that she had never truly needed their approval at all. She had only needed one person to remember the truth, and he had remembered it all along. As the second dance came to its end, Alira Voss stood taller than she had in 3 long years, her scar catching the candlelight not as a mark of shame, but as a quiet, unmistakable sign of who she truly was.